I was surprised how small it was when I first saw it. Are we playing for this trophy? But I tell you what, it means a hell of a lot to Australian players, it means a hell of a lot to English players, it means a hell of a lot to Australians and English in general. And it is what we played for, and now the current crop of players, it means just as much to them as it meant to everyone that has played for our respective countries. It's a wonderful rivalry. It's just something I've looked back fondly on, and I continue to look fondly on. I think we had a pretty good team, to be perfectly honest. I think we had a really good team. I've often thought about this. I remember when I played part of the Australian side, played for in the late 90s and the 2000s until 05. There was a real difference with England in 05 compared to the times before that. Even little things like you'd see an English player come out with a different sweater on, or a different colour helmet, or a different cap. Someone might wear a baseball cap. It seemed like it was just a group of blokes that had come together to play for England, but they weren't a team. I suppose the big difference I noticed with 05 was, and people might see these as little things, but when the English team came out for their preparation on the morning of the day, they'd all go and they'd meet at a point. There'd be a little discussion, and they'd be running to an activity here to work with the strength and conditioning coach, and they'd run over here, there'd be a fielding drill, and go here, and it was all very sharp, and I use the word urgency. I think there was urgency with that 05 England side, and even and other little things I noticed, and I can't speak very much, I certainly observed was the umpire, they'd be fielding, and they'd walk out, and straight away the whole team had come out straight after, and I observed English sides in the past, umpires would be near the middle, and then they'd just drip feed out, almost Brown's cows, just come out in their own time. Some would be chewing gum and just wandering here, others would be wandering here, there'd be a discussion over here. It was, how can I put it, there wasn't the urgency. Yeah. But 05, it's just these little things picked. Possibly, I wouldn't discount that. Yeah. I think Varney, had the thing, he brought the huddle in. Yeah. And I did ask him about the huddle, and I said, mate, was that just for show and all this sort of stuff? And his response to me was, that was the only place where we knew, when in the modern era where there's a lot of people around the team and that, it was their opportunity just for 30 seconds where in that huddle anyone could speak and no one other than the playing 11 would hear anything. You could say whatever you want or just listen or do whatever. It was. We'd done it a bit, yeah. But that was something. But yeah, the big word, I think, from when I first started playing until that 05, that great series, that was the difference I noticed personally with England. There was just a bit more urgency in everything they did. What the baggy green means to me, it was a reward for all the hard work and effort that you put in. That, for me, I know everyone has different opinions on the baggy green, and I know some guys it doesn't mean as much. And yes, it is. It's at the end of the day, it is a cap with a logo on it. I get that, but it was a symbol for me from when I was 7 years of age, and I had the dream of playing for Australia. I remember playing in the backyard, and I was playing in the front yard on the driveway, and I was playing with my mates, and everyone would say, right, who are you? Everyone would talk about, oh, I'm going to be Alan Border, and I'm going to be Merv Hughes, and oh, Jason, who are you? I'm me. And because my thought process, even back as a kid, was, well, I want to be playing. Yeah. I don't want to pretend I'm someone else. Yeah. I want to play for Australia. And that was just how I went. And so from age 7 all the way through, I had this deep desire to one day represent my country. And I suppose that it was a symbol of making it in a way, is putting that cap on your head. And it's that hard work. You know, I reflect back on, you know, mum and dad driving you everywhere. You know, my dad, I remember there were a few Christmases as a kid where I got a new cricket bat. So what did I want to do? Go up to the nets on Christmas Day. You know, I'm sure the old man, he was keen to maybe have a glass of wine after Christmas lunch and sit in front of the telly or do whatever, but took me up the nets and he'd be bowling at me for hours on end. You know, so, you know, I know parents were quite proud, you know, when I was fortunate enough to, you know, represent Australia. And, you know.
So when you popped it on first, do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get, the presentations came after, so when mine was given to me in a bag, and I do remember before my test debut in Sydney, the night before, I'm sort of in my hotel room and getting it out of the bag and put it on and sort of walk to the mirror and just, oh, how good's this? And
you go all right, you reckon?
Don't quite have the head shape for it, and I need a bit more of a peak for my honk, so didn't quite cover. But there was no way I was not going to wear it. I mean, I did wear the floppy for a period of time, but, you know, I remember Steve brought in the first session, you know, or was it Tubby? I'm not quite sure, but we wore the baggy for the first session of a test match when we're fielding, or at least the first hour. And I quite like that. It's a little thing, you know, not everyone necessarily thought that was the best thing to do, but you know what, it shows a bit of solidarity. You know, that image, that attitude of, you know, the opposition come out, wow, we're playing Australia here. This isn't just another test match, we're playing Australia. And that's what you want, that.
I reckon it looks brilliant.
You want that awe, you want that you want the opposers to be intimidated. You know, you intimidate by nailing your skills. You intimidate by your body language. You intimidate by your attitude. You know, you don't need to resort to necessarily to words. I'm sure a bit was spoken. I don't know, I was walking back to my mark. But I'm sure there were a few words being spoken from behind the stumps. But yeah, mate, but you wanted to show that, you know, you were, the oppos were in for a contest. Well, they put pressure back on the bowlers, didn't they? And as a teammate, it was very comforting to, you know, we win the toss and bat, so it was really comforting with our batting order, because you knew the work they put in to prepare. They left no stone unturned. They worked their rings off to prepare well. You knew they'd done everything they could to be ready for this contest. So you, as a teammate, and that's what I'd like them to think of the bowlers. We're giving ourselves the best chance. So you sit back and, you know, I know sometimes the bowlers and the batters get annoyed at blokes like myself, being a Pidgey, Flem, you know, all the lads. Because if the toss went up and we're batting, we'd be sort of swanning around the dressing room, high-fiving each other. Oh, fuck, you beauty, you're batting, you know. And they're looking at us going, all right, we need to prepare here. Can you just shut that thing up? Sorry, boys. Go, make yourself a cup of tea. All the best, lads, all the best. We're looking at each other. Two players that went about their craft in different ways, in a way, probably very different personalities. Both. With Glenn, I've never known anyone in life, let alone cricket, that was so confident in his own ability, and so confident in his teammates about doing their jobs, knowing his own job. It's not, you know, and I know Glenn's famous for saying, oh, we're going to win 5-0 and all this sort of stuff. But his logic was very simple. And it was not, you only have to meet Glenn to know he's not an arrogant man, far from it. Probably the least arrogant person you'd ever want to meet. But his attitude was, well, I'm going to do my job and get my skills right. You're going to do your job. We're going to, everyone's going to do their jobs well. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And he planned it out. He said, well, this is our plan, and we're going to implement our plan. There's no way these guys can come near us. And so let's just do our jobs. And so he's just confident in his own ability because he'd known, he'd done the work, he knew everyone had worked hard. And Warney was of similar vein. He always knew he was in the game. One good lesson I learnt from Warney, and one time he probably wasn't at his best. He was feeling a bit down, and he said to me one day, he said, "Diz, every now and again everyone needs a little bit of love." And I thought about that a lot, and here I am hearing that from one of the greatest players in the history of the game, and he's saying that sometimes he needs someone to pat him on the back. So, mate, you're doing well. And I took that away, a lot. I learnt a lot from that little experience with the great man. And it was, once Shane stepped out on the arena, once the king was out there, that was his stage, and he owned that. And that was one of the greatest things Warney had, was his bravado and attitude and confidence and body language out in the middle. The great man, Big DK, unbelievable. But that's a really good way of describing the king. He just knew. Because in his later years, he didn't really bowl wrong-uns. A big turning leg break and his slider, but his body language and his attitude, well, it allowed him to bowl as good deliveries and put batsmen under pressure. That's for sure. And he was the absolute master of that. I think for any young aspiring cricketer, you want lessons in put pressure on the opposition. Just how Warney constructed an over, and his body language, brilliant. I strived, I wouldn't know if other people refer to this, I strived to be ruthless, just be disciplined, look to bowl fast, I always strive to bowl quick, but I wanted to be ruthless with my line and length. I obviously learnt that from playing with Glenn and Mike Kasperovich, Flemmo, Pistol, Paul Rifle, Andy Bickle, Brett. Learn from these guys. Right, what's going to allow you to be successful? And picked up tips from each and every one of them. They were great. But I suppose having bowled a lot with Glenn and seeing how he operated, his ruthlessness of just being so disciplined, that really rubbed off on me. I would say, before 05, I would say English would always stay in the game as long as they could, and then maybe look to get a win. Whereas I think we would always be focused on what's going to allow us to win the game of cricket. And then if all the chance of winning was exhausted, we fight like hell to save the game. But I'm not sure the English had that mentality.
They do now.
They do now. They definitely do. You were noticed and you were known. I wouldn't say rock star. I think certainly not. Look, I was there to do my job.
Yeah.
It was bowl cricket balls and help the team win games of cricket. I think if you read the papers and you probably get a bit above your station if you allowed it. But I was there to play cricket and represent my country and play cricket with my mates, and you know that stuff is part of it, and you just embrace it. You can either embrace it or get annoyed with it. I think you always have times where something might annoy you, but I think you then have to get a bit of perspective, and you soon get your perspective back. You know, even for a fleeting moment, if you're carrying on like a tit, you know, getting a bit big for your boots, you come down pretty quick. It is the game. It is the traditions of our game. It's how Test cricket started. Ashes cricket is where it's at. It is for me, it's what is keeping Test cricket alive. Is Ashes cricket. You know, I really hope it, you know, long may it continue. I think it's like Test cricket is a wonderful sport. You know, the traditions. You know, I think the traditions are absolutely brilliant. You know, I think we've got to celebrate those traditions. You know, and I think that the challenge for the players, you know, is obviously set new targets and drive those standards forward. You know, I think that's really important. And as a sport, you know, the administrators have a role to play here. You know, we don't want to lose Test cricket. It is the pinnacle of the game, and Ashes cricket is the pinnacle of Test cricket.